Hello friends, today we bring you a sad story of a married girl, Lucy's story. The painful tale of a married woman. A sad story about a girl, which you will surely like. Let's begin reading the story. Lucy was born into a prosperous family, and was the youngest, the apple of everyone's eye. Her mother, father and brother took care of her every need, sending her to good schools and eventually to a top college in Boston to pursue an MBA. As Lucy was completing her MBA, her brother David married Julia in a love marriage. Julia, a modern, independent woman, preferred living in a nuclear family. She did not want to live with David's parents, considered herself supreme in the household, and wanted David to set up a separate home for his parents so she could live alone with him. However, David did not want to leave his parents and sister Lucy, which led to frequent disputes. David tried explaining to Julia that his parents had raised him and were the reason for his success. David told her that as the daughter-in-law, it was her moral responsibility to care for his family. But Julia wouldn't listen, even threatening to file a legal case against his parents and his sister, dragging them into court if he didn't separate from them. The family was already distressed, and the threat terrified them, especially since Lucy was in Boston for her MBA and stayed in a hostel. David and his parents were heartbroken and lived in constant fear, hoping Lucy would finish her studies and build a successful career. The situation at home had become so tense that her parents felt they had no choice but to concede to Julia's demands, leaving them anxious for Lucy's future. As the family struggled, they decided to marry Lucy off, hoping that it might reduce the conflict. In haste, they arranged her marriage with Ryan, a police officer in New York, but Ryan's condition was that Lucy couldn't work after marriage. Her parents accepted, thinking it was her fate and at least she would be safe and cared for. So, despite their initial dreams of seeing Lucy stand on her own feet, they married her off to Ryan. Shortly after, David filed for divorce from Julia, bringing some peace to the family. Ryan treated Lucy well for the initial months, but soon small arguments escalated, and eventually, Ryan began mistreating her. He would insult her family, mentioning David's divorce, and even threatened to divorce her in the same way. Lucy endured physical and verbal abuse, restricted from contacting her parents, and under the constant threat of Ryan's influence as a police officer. She bore the pain, concealing it from her family to spare them more hurt, not wanting them to realize the harsh reality of her life. Eventually, Ryan sent Lucy to live with his parents in his hometown, where she was forced to work with livestock, a life she had never known. She did all sorts of heavy labor, from fetching water to handling the cattle, with no support from Ryan's family, who constantly berate her. Her brother David eventually learned of her suffering and went to visit her. But Lucy, torn between her own pain and the fear of further disgrace, told David to consider her dead and never to return. She didn't want her parents to face more shame, fearing people would talk if both siblings returned home after failed marriages. With tears, Lucy bid David farewell, choosing to endure her fate in silence, for the sake of her family's reputation. This story isn't just about one Lucy. Thousands of young women today dream of bright futures, but sacrifice their dreams and lives due to family expectations. Their cries remain buried within, blaming fate and consoling themselves in silence.